Okay, today's date is June 10th, 2021. Time I have is 2:04 p.m. Thursday. This is the interview of Mr. Randy Murdaugh. Conducting the interview is Senior Special Agent Joe Albialde of the State Law Enforcement Division. And Lauren, if you go ahead and identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Detective Rutland, Laura Rutland with the Colleton County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, Randy, if you would just, for the official record, state your full name and your date of birth, please.
My name is Randy Murdaugh. I'm the 4th. My date of birth.
Okay, and Randy, do you know the physical address where we're currently at right now? It's okay if you don't.
I don't know the physical address. It's a place referred to by my brother John as Greenfield.
Okay. Okay, and obviously we're here today to go back and establish your timeline or what you did back on June the 7th, which was Monday, and how you came to be notified of what happened to both Paul and Maggie. So if you just want to kind of go through what you recall that day, starting out what you were doing, and just kind of go through from the time you got up, mid-afternoon, onto the evening when you heard what happened.
Obviously I hadn't tried to put my timeline together, but I can tell you generally what I was doing, and it's probably easier to start from the phone call with Alex and go back.
Sure.
Obviously it's harder for us to talk about this.
Take your time.
But going back, I was at home and I received that phone call, and that was a little after 10. Before that, and my wife at home, we'd actually watched a movie together, Crazy Rich Asians, I think is the name of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of did that together because before that, I'm talking more generally because I don't know specifically, but I would have come in from work. I don't know exactly what time I left work, but I think it was after everybody had left. Alec was the only one that was, I think, still there, and I don't know exactly what time I came in, but I would have come directly from work. And we do have cameras and videos at my home, and we would be able to tell what time I arrived, which would be 3 or 4 minutes after I left work. We also have video at my office, which would show when I left. Now, I don't know how the video at the office works. I assume it records all the time besides just seeing it. At home, I know it records, but that would let you know when I left the office, as well as whether Alec was there or not. Before that, I was working. I honestly don't. I could try to piece it together going back if you want me to, but I would have been at work throughout the day.
Do you
Actually, you know what? So I do remember.
Okay.
I didn't get to work until late that day. It was probably after lunch, because it's kind of a long story, but my father has been having serious physical problems.
Yeah.
And he had been in the hospital. I took him to an appointment on Friday. I'm gonna try to make this part quick, but took him to a doctor's appointment on Friday. It was told he needed to be hospitalized. He wasn't well enough to have his radiation, and so I had been with him Friday, all day Saturday, and all day Sunday. when he was released from the hospital, I brought him home. So the next day, my brother John was going to take him to his appointments, which would be Monday. And I had to coordinate with doctors to try to figure out, hey, what's he need to be seen for? What are we going to do? He just got out of the hospital. We had conflict in medical news. Make a long story short, we learned at the last minute he needed to be in Savannah to be seen by one of his doctors. There was no way that John could come to Hampton to get him and make it back to Savannah by the time. So I loaded my dad up, took him, met John at Palmetto Electric in Ridgeland. We just swapped cars so that my dad wouldn't have to get in and out of a car because it's physically hard for him to. John drove in Savannah. I came back. That put me getting back late. I would have probably eaten lunch and gone to work, which has me getting into work late.
Yeah, okay.
Make a long story short, I got into work late.
Okay. So get the lunch after work, or after the lunch, or get to work after the lunch hour.
I'm not sure. It was definitely after lunch hour. I don't know whether I ate lunch or not, but in any event.
We left the office generally when closing time comes about around 5 o'clock, 5 to 6.
5 o'clock, I mean, is the general office closing time. My recollection is it would have been later than that. And I seem to recall, and I believe it was that Monday, you know, when things aren't meaningful yet, you know, obviously it's harder to recall, but I believe it was that Monday that it was after hours that Alec and I were talking. And I do specifically remember, and I know for a fact it was that Monday that he said, I'm going to go visit Dad. I was like, Daddy's not home. Oh man, I forgot, he's in the hospital. And what I don't specifically remember is what time it was. I believe that was probably 5:30 or 6, but again, you can look at a camera real easy and see. And then I would have left from work and gone straight home.
Okay.
I live about a mile, less than a mile.
Okay, so we're relatively close to the office. And I think I heard you earlier say that Alec was still at the law office when you left.
I think he was still there. And again, many times when I leave, Alec will be there. When he leaves, I'll be there. I know for a fact we talked about him visiting Daddy because he was wrong, that he can't go visit Daddy. Daddy's in the hospital. I said, you going to Savannah? And he's like, oh, you know. But as far as what time it was, you know, I would defer to the camera, honestly. I mean, as I sit here, if I had to guess, I'd say it was probably 5:30 to 6, but I don't know that.
Definitely still, so it wasn't like dark, like...
At that time, no, it was not late. And remember, I had, I went home and we watched this movie, and we ate, and we, you know, all that stuff. And
if I recall, you said basically your wife, they were home with you, and then at some point you get a phone call from Alec. Okay. And I hate to revisit that phone call, but kind of go through that with us. Okay, so he calls you, and I know it's hard to say what time unless you go through your phone and scroll back through, but definitely dark by that point, correct?
Yeah, I know it was just a little bit after 10, because later that night, meaning on Monday night, when I'm standing out at Alex's place at Moselle in disbelief, you know, I remember trying to look and see when that phone call was. And I think I probably actually saw the phone call then, but I don't remember exactly when it was. But I remember also seeing a text from him that was 10:18, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm obviously looking at my phone.
Yeah, you're fine.
And but the way the phone call came about, I don't know where I was in the in the home. So at 10:18, I got a text from him. Please call me emergency.
Okay.
And I was not aware I had ever gotten that text from him, okay, until sometime later that night. The way I was actually notified was by answering a phone call that Alec made to my wife's phone, okay?
Gotcha.
And I had not heard my phone ring. I don't know whether I was out of the house doing something with the dog or whatever. I don't really know, but I had not been aware that anybody had called me. And she says something to the extent, he's already called your phone twice here. And when she said that, I mean, I knew there was something wrong.
Yeah.
And so I answered her phone, and it was on her phone that I took that call.
Gotcha. So I'm going to ask you to recall verbatim what Alex said, but to your best of your ability, how did that conversation kind of play out? And take all the time you need.
Elk could hardly talk.
Yeah.
But you could tell there was something really bad wrong.
Yeah.
And he was saying, I had more than one conversation with him, and so it's hard to tell. It's hard for me to know what came from the second conversation and the first conversation. Both were just scrambled.
Yeah.
And it was just a frantic phone call from him. But in those phone calls, and I think it was in the first one, he said, Maggie and Paul have been shot. And at some point, either in that call or the next call, he said, they shot Maggie and Paul. And I think it's in the first one. I don't know. I don't know whether he said,
Yeah.
I don't know whether he said, I think they're dead. Or he said it's real bad. Or he might have said all of this.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very frantic, crying, upset, hard to understand, except I could tell that they had been shot and that they might be dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember trying to talk to him and say, Alec, are you okay? And I might have asked him, no, not I might have, I'm going to presume I asked him. No, I know for a fact I asked him because I know his answer. His answer is yes, I've called 911. So I asked him, have you called 911 to know what I needed to do? And he had already called 911. And I asked him somehow or another to find out, you know, are you safe or is this still going on or whatnot? And I left that conversation not clear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
About that.
Yep.
I don't know how we ended the conversation. I think we probably ended it with me saying, I'm coming right now. I'll be there in a few minutes.
Yep.
I'll be right there. And I told my wife. And I just told him I didn't know how bad it was, but it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And this would have been me hanging up, and I'm running to grab shoes. I'm trying to tell them to stay there.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Alex under attack or he's safe or he's not.
Yeah.
And I literally am going to run out of the house. And so I say, I need to grab a gun. I don't say that. I'm thinking this. I need to grab a gun. There were 2 guns out of a gun case, or they never in a gun case. They're on my, leaning up on my mantle. One's a BB gun, one's a shotgun. But I know that shotgun has turkey shells in it. That's the last season it was in.
Yeah.
And then I have a friend from California who has a 223. I guess it's an AK. Is it not AK? What is it? AR-15. It's an assault rifle looking thing.
Yeah.
And I'd been shooting that gun some, in the weeks past, or whenever it was. But anyway, it was in a case. I opened it. There's 3 clips. And no clips have bullets in it. And it's a box. And I shake the box. I don't even know if there's bullets in the damn gun.
Right.
I mean, in the box. And I grabbed the clip, grabbed the box, grabbed the gun, and I run out. And I tell them to get my dog. My dog had already been in the kennel. She sleeps in the kennel in the back of the truck, backed into the driveway. And so she's pregnant. So I took her out. Literally, they got her. And I drove faster than I should have driven over there. And during the time I was driving, I think it must have been drizzling. And I was calling people and trying to get to my brother and his family as quick as I could. And the first thing that came to my mind, since he'd already called 911, and because I know his location can be difficult to find, of course, I didn't think rationally like I should have. 911's going to ping him. He knows exactly where he is so they can come right to him. But I called, I think probably the first person I called was Greg Cook. Greg Cook is one of the fire chiefs in Hampton. But most importantly, he's one of Alex's very good friends. And so he knows the location. And so I had to tell him what happened. Of course, he couldn't believe what happened. And I just said, Maggie and Paul have been shot. I don't know how bad it is. And my thoughts were getting people there to help Alec and Maggie and Paul, still hoping they're alive, and he could guide them there.
Yep.
And he said he'd do whatever he said he'd do. I can't remember. I may have gotten a phone call from John, or I may have gotten a phone call from Alec. I know at some point I tried to call Alec back, and I know Alec tried to call me back. If I ever saw Alec calling in, I would have answered it, obviously. And I know I talked to Alec again and told them I'm on my way. And he was saying what he already believed, but it was like, I don't remember what the words were, but basically he was telling me that they're shot, and I think they're dead. And it was not a calm conversation. It was a very frantic conversation, and it was, I think I recall it was a lot shorter conversation, not that the first one was all that long.
Yeah.
He might have told me that that the responders were there. It's not a long drive. I don't know how long it is, 10 or 15 minutes to his house from mine, or maybe a little bit longer, whatever it is. And there was a number of calls, me calling, them calling, in my truck going as fast as it can go.
Yeah.
And my trying to protect me, apparently, somehow or another, she heard somebody say that they weren't alive. I don't know how that is. Maybe if Christy called John and John told Christy. Christy's my wife. But somehow or another, she believed that they weren't alive, and she called me and said, "Don't go in the house. Don't go in the house." And sometime during this, or possibly shortly after I got there, I remember telling my wife, "Y'all don't go out there, or don't come out here, one or the other." And so there's just these phone calls. I get to Alex, and as I get closer, I see the first responder lights. I don't remember seeing them at the tractor shed and the kennel.
Yeah.
You could sort of see it a little ways if you've been there. You know, you could, if it was dark, you'd be able to see the lights over there past the little branch. I don't remember seeing those. It might have been because I was driving too fast. I was going to the house, because in my mind, I'm thinking, this is at the house. I don't know whether it's because Caroline said it, or I just assumed it was at the house. Alec never said where it was, where they were shot. He just said, "I'm at Moselle." That's all he said. Moselle is just what he calls the area. He calls the place. So, I mean, literally there were some people in the road. I had to drive into the ditch to turn into his gate because of several vehicles were there, and someone had the road blocked, and I turned into the gate and sped as quickly as I could to his house. Ran up to his house. There was nobody there. There was no responders there, but they all out on the highway, you know. And I ran in the house, hollering his name, and then when I turned to come to the yard and holler his name, I don't know whether I saw lights up at the kennel. You can't see the actual lights, but you can see the lights in the the sky. I don't know whether I saw lights like that, or no. You know what? I saw other vehicles going there. I saw other vehicles go there, and some other vehicles may have come behind me and then left. I can't remember. I think maybe some responders did. But in any event, and I went down to the kennels, and I saw Alex Suburban sitting where it remained when SLED came and documented the scene. I pulled up slightly behind him and a little bit to the right, and I jumped out and looked for him.
And I apologize, I wasn't at the scene, so were you able to talk with Alec at that point?
Yep, yes. I was able to find him.
Yeah.
And there were responders already there.
Yeah. Who else for the family was there at that point? Anyone else?
I don't think anybody was there.
Mm.
I can't remember if there was another vehicle on what I'm going to call the house side of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some vehicles on the other side, and there were some and I was using the term first responders loosely because some of them were, like, sure enough, first responders, but there may have been some police officers also at this scene.
Yeah.
I never saw blue lights out when I was coming in, when I was calling it first responders. But, you know, I found him, and we just hugged and cried, and and then when we stopped, I could see the white sheets up ahead. I didn't know who was where. I mean, and I still couldn't believe that it could be true. I mean, I knew whoever's under those sheets were not alive. But I didn't think it could be possible. It could be them.
Yeah.
I remember when, might have been Mr. Buddy was talking to Alec. One of the deputies was, and I think it was Mr. Buddy. He asked, "Who's the young girl? Who's the young lady?" And Alec said, "That's my wife, Maggie," whatever words he said, but he told him, and Mr. Buddy's like, "Oh, no, I didn't know. And at that point, I asked Alec, I said, "Alec, are you sure? Are you sure that's Maggie?"
Yeah.
I only said that because Mr. Buddy didn't know, and he thought it was a young person. Maggie's my age, or a little bit young, slightly younger.
Yeah.
She's 50-ish, 50, probably 2. I never wished this on somebody else. I didn't want it to be one of Paul's friends, but I didn't want it to be Maggie. And I said, "Are you sure it's Maggie?"
Yeah.
And of course, it was. And when I asked Alec that, he said, "Yes, it is." And then he sort of paused and he looked up there and he's like, "Yeah, it's the same clothes she had on." And I don't know what she looked like, whether she was bloody or whether she wasn't, or whether she's face down or not. I don't know what he was able to see or not able to see. But it's like he knew it was her, but he paused, like maybe it went and didn't put 2 and 2. No, it had to be. That's definitely her.
Mm-hmm.
I even said, do we need to go check? Do we need to see if that's her? And he said, no, that's her.
Yeah.
And a lot of kind of from that point on, and not just that point, but after arriving and finding him, and we were there for many hours, however long. I don't know the answer. I don't know what time we left. It was late. Other people came up. I'm sorry, there's a phone call coming in. It's probably hospice for my dad. I may pause in a little bit, and just if they leave a message, I'll check it.
Okay.
But other folks came up. I know some of my law partners, and this is over the course of hours, other law partners came up. I mean, we work together, but we're not just co-workers. I mean, we're truly like family.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up, and some other friends came up. Of course, law enforcement came up at some point. Law enforcement taped off, I don't know, put up the police lines, and then a little bit later, they came and put up another one that was a little bit further back, and I specifically remember that because initially my truck was not in it, but then my truck was in it, even though the truck didn't move, which is fine. And it probably should have been taped off the second way like it was. But in any event, what I'm saying is throughout this, it sort of gets a little blurred. And I'll be honest with you, it's still never, you see the sheets. You just can't believe that they're dead.
Yeah.
And then it became a staring at your phone and trying to text people to protect them so they don't hear about this. And Alec was trying to call people and people close to him, and some people he couldn't call. It appeared to me, and I never asked him whether he did this, it looked like to me he would call people or start to call people, or maybe he was just pulling it up and had them on there about to call but couldn't make the calls. And so I called a few people for him. And one of the calls was to his son, Buster.
Yeah.
And he said he has to make that call to Buster. And I was with him when he started trying to tell Buster.
Yeah.
And he just broke down. Alec broke down so much uncontrollably he couldn't talk. And so I got on the phone and told Buster.
Yeah.
And throughout the night, Alec was like that, where some of the times he's just standing there almost like in disbelief. And other times he just totally out of control. I don't mean out of control like he just was emotionally out of control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there were a few family members that we couldn't get. So I texted. I never said in my text what had happened. I think I used the phrase, "It's been a horrible tragedy. Please call me."
Mm-hmm.
I wanted people to understand the graveness of it, but at the same time, don't put it in a text.
Right. Yeah.
And Maggie's mother and father obviously needed to know, but they're not in the best shape.
Yeah.
They're older. And so Alec thought it best to call Maggie's brother-in-law, Bart, to tell Maggie's sister, and then for Bart to go in person and tell Maggie's mom and dad. And so when wanting to call Bart, I remember him specifically pulling Bart up several times. I don't know whether he ever hit, but I doubt if he hit because Bart would have called him back. But in any event, he finally asked me would I call Bart.
Yeah.
And I did. I called Bart. I left some message. I don't know what the message was, but basically something conveying it was really bad and the call and it's serious and it's urgent. And he didn't call back. And I called, if I'm not mistaken, I called him from, I don't know, I'm confused about this part. I think I called Bart from Alec's phone. I didn't have Bart's contact. And throughout the night, Alec, I'd ask him to send me some contacts for people I needed to call or for people that I needed to monitor. But I think I probably called Bart from Alec's phone and didn't get him. And I know I texted Bart, and I don't know whose phone I texted. I can look and see. I got Bart's number in here now. So I texted Bart from one of the two phones and basically tried to convey a message that is really serious, call me, and told him it was me. I was probably texting from Alex. Well, maybe I don't have Bart's number in here. Oh no, I'm Googling text. I'm searching text. So let me go back to his contact. But I conveyed by text to Bart that he needed to call me, and he called my phone. And when I told him the news, and he, like all of us, was just. So are you telling me that they're dead?
Yeah.
And I said, Bart, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I must have texted him from Alex because I just put up like I'm going to text him and there's nothing there, so I assumed that I texted him from Alex's phone. And Bart called me back a few minutes later, 10 minutes later, whatever it was, and I could hear his wife in the background just so very upset. And and Bart was trying to get details. Of course, I didn't have any details. I told him what I could see, and he said, Bart, I told him how far I was, and I said I could see 2 sheets, and I'm told that it's Paul and Maggie, and there's no reason to think it's not. I said I asked that specifically about Maggie, and that was only because of what Mr. Buddy had said.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still like just in disbelief. But in any event, we talked about him telling Maggie's mom and dad, and so there was more conversation there. And throughout the night, it was sort of notifying family. I mean, I tried to reach out to some people my age and older, and of course, they don't answer the phone at night. They don't hear the phone at night like I don't.
Yeah.
And but I texted them, and we kind of stood around. There came a time when so Alex sent me Buster's girlfriend's contact, and when I talked to Buster, we had specifically said, make sure you don't drive, you have somebody drive you. And so she was going to be driving, and then I got her contact, and then she shared her location. I was able to track her, and there came a time in there where they were getting closer, and the phones don't work the best out there, in the service at the best around there. And so I was worried they might have been closer than what it was saying they were, and I wanted to make sure. That's right. We did not want him riding up on the scene, and Alec at that time was he was in a vehicle with what I would assume was SLED or some officer giving a statement. Mm-hmm. And I said, I went over there and I said, y'all please tell him he's getting close. Anyway, at that point, that's when when Alec finished that, everybody moved away. I waited at the end of the drive that connects from the main drive and the one that goes to the kennel area, and met Buster, and everybody then was up at the house. And I directed him up to the house.
Yeah.
Of course, we went up to the house, and everybody just sat around with a total blank on their face, just not knowing what to say or what to do. How long to sit there. By then it was late. If there was more than a few words said, I don't know what they were.
Mm-hmm.
And basically that's it that night. I didn't stay there. I didn't sleep there. Actually, nobody did. Everybody left. Alec and Buster. So, family-wise, Alec and Buster and John, and I didn't tell you, my sister also came from Somerville. She had already arrived as well, but they all left from the house and went to my mom and dad's and stayed there. I didn't go there because I had to go tell my daddy the next day. And he was in the hospital by himself. And so I went home and I sat with for however long, 30 minutes or 45 minutes or something. We just hugged and couldn't believe that it could be possible, knowing that it was.
Mm.
I think I might have gone to bed at 4:30, 4:45.
Yeah.
And I got up a little after 6 and got ready to go to the hospital, and I went down to the hospital. And I was with my dad the rest of the day.
Yeah. Mm. Wow. I'll say Dad didn't take it well.
No, he didn't take it well, but he was so sick. He was so sick that he I could tell he was upset, but I mean, you would not have known if you were sitting beside us. In fact, you would think my daddy wasn't very intelligent, because he said, "What happened to somebody?" And, you know, it's like he couldn't quite put it together. But when I told him, he also had just come out of a procedure. He was coming off of anesthesia, and my daddy's not an unintelligent person. It's like it's like he couldn't believe it. Just like the rest of us, but also like he wasn't comprehending it. And later, you could tell he was upset. Later, he was able to comprehend it because he was off of anesthesia, and maybe it was sinking in, I don't know. But in any event, I didn't tell him when I first got there. I was asked by the doctor not to tell him because he was in a fairly fragile state. And I say fragile state, he has very serious cancer. He has stage 4 cancer. It's closing in on one of the airways to his lungs, among other things. And so he was supposed to have a procedure that morning. And it got delayed, and it was ongoing. Do I tell him? Do I wait till after the procedure? They kept saying, tell him. And I hate to say it, in my experience, after the boating accident, so much crap was made up and said to create news. I was just worried that he would see some kind of crap on the TV, or even just see a real reporting of it, okay? A legitimate reporting would be just as harmful for him, but I also didn't want him to get a text. I didn't want him to get a phone call, and so it was a dilemma. And to make the long story short, I didn't tell him until after he was finished with that procedure. And unfortunately, that procedure confirmed that treatment wasn't going to help him.
Sorry to hear that.
So he and I discussed whether he comes home to die.
Yeah.
And we decided that he would. And we came home that night on hospice, knowing we would start hospice.
Well, he needs to be home with his family, so.
He does. It's not a good time.
It's a lot better for a family to handle. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Didn't need to, but thank you very much for doing that. I'm treading lightly. I don't want to ask too many questions or get too far in the weeds with things, but about Alec and his family, particularly his relationship with Maggie, and I don't have it straight. Or
You what?
I don't have it straight. Is Maggie and Alec together still, or are they
What do you mean?
like, are they still married, or are they like? How, do you know anything about their family situation?
Before this event?
Yes, before that.
Yeah, they're still married. They're still living together. As far as I know, they don't have any problems.
Okay. No marital issues or anything. And I'm sorry, I prying
None.
questions, but we got to ask them nonetheless.
None that I'm aware of at all, and I would know.
Yeah, absolutely, you would know, because I mean,
Yes.
We've only met. This is the first time we've met, and it's obvious that you and Alec are very close.
We are close.
So I would expect him to, if there were any issues with the family, he would probably share that with you.
Well, I think you would see it too.
Yeah. So none of that. Obviously, Paul had his own set of problems. We're not here to, bring up old events or talk about, the troubles he was in or anything like that. But Paul had his own set of issues. We know that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it that. Paul made some bad decisions one night, and it led to a grave set of circumstances. He put his friends in a bad situation, and with events that I don't fully understand, that accident happened. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I know it happened because of what he had done earlier.
Yeah.
You know what? But
so
those became issues because of.
And obviously,
Paul's a wonderful kid. He'll get your shirt off his back.
So which brings us to where we are at this point, as far as I don't know if the family's had time to actually sit down together and kind of think about who potentially could have been responsible for this, or if there were any enemies of the family. I know that you guys have dealt with previous.
I mean, obviously, these very questions start going through our mind.
Right.
Shortly after all this, as you're standing there looking at this scene. I don't know. I mean, just lots of questions in my mind. Obviously, because of the accident, you hear or see or read what I call loudmouths on social media, which I think are people that probably have something wrong with them, and they hide behind a computer screen and saying stuff they shouldn't say.
Yeah.
And while those might be the loudest, they're certainly not the majority. But when you read some of that stuff, there's some really sick people. I tend to think people are good people, and there's a few bad people out there.
Sure there are.
I can't imagine that people that write that crap could do something, but I don't know. There's some really, look at some of the stuff after this. There's some really sick people, But as far as who would I say, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, all the people in that boat were friends. I mean, these weren't strangers. This wasn't somebody swerving across the center line and, strangers involved or something like that. These are all friends. I don't know how they feel because all you hear is their lawyer talking and not them. But do I think that Philip or Renee could just, no way.
Yeah.
That's the beach. Parents, no, I don't think there's any possible way. The two of them. Is there some weird person out there, sick person that gets pumped up by all this crap that's said that Mike could do it? I don't know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's bad people. I don't know who they would be.
Mhm.
I don't think the other people in the boat personally would. That honestly, that doesn't cross my mind.
Yeah.
So I don't really know.
And Al had mentioned anything, as of recent following the incident about having the family having issues with anybody out there, whether it was.
Alec didn't, but I don't know how this came up, but I'll just tell you. So,
Sure.
there's a gentleman that I've not met. I now know his name is C.B. Rowe, and I'm gonna tell you the short version, and then you ask if you need more details.
Sure.
There was Paul told me a little while back, that Alec told me that somebody that was helping him, that I later now know as C.B. Rowe,
Mm-hmm.
sprayed his sunflowers with Roundup, which means it's going to kill them. That night when we were there, in other words, Monday night,
Mm-hmm.
one of Paul's friends came up, and I don't know if it's him that said it, but I think it was him that said that Paul was there, and I think what I understood, it might have been secondhand, was Paul was there to basically fix the problem, meaning fix the field. And the only way you fix the field, it's got sunflowers that's going to die, is you replant them. So what he was going to do, whether he's going to plow them under, or whether he was going to, whatever he's going to do, he was going to fix it. He's going to replant it or do whatever. And in my mind, I thought, Alec had told me a few weeks ago, he told me about somebody that was working for him, which again, now I know is C.B. Rowe. And there was some bizarre thing that C.B. Rowe had told someone who told Alec. I don't know exactly the details because it wasn't important to me, except it was just amusing and yet sick, that he was, I don't know, he had something had happened to him, and he was young, and he had done something, and because of something he had done, that some agency thought he was special. I don't know whether it's the FBI or something like that, and that they hired him as an assassin to work with a team of Navy SEALs assassinating black people, black radicals or something like that.
Yeah.
And the point of Alec telling me that, and he was detailed about it, and the details didn't matter to me, except what I'm hearing is, what in the world?
Right.
And Alec's like, how can you employ somebody that tells you that? And I said, well, he's obviously lying.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that agency, whatever it was, doesn't assassinate. And not only that, this dude couldn't be in any agency.
Yeah.
And so Alec was, can you keep somebody on that's a liar and it's, goof stuff up? So going back to that night when I heard that Paul was out there to fix the field, I thought about him. And it's not because I know anything about him. He might be a perfectly nice fella.
Yeah.
Alec thinks he is. Alec says he's weird, but I don't think this guy could do that.
Right. Yeah.
But I thought it. I thought not that he did it, but I thought, okay, here's a potential for a run-in. Oh yeah, and that guy had, because I asked Alec about when did he leave work. He said he wasn't at work today. He called in sick or something like that. I think I asked Alec why, and I think Alec said he thought that CB was taking somebody to a doctor's appointment or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not on record saying I think CB Rowe did it. Okay,
Right,
I want to be clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're asking how my mind thinks and who am I thinking about. So I'm thinking about, I don't know how it happened when I'm standing out there looking at this on Monday night, and potential ways it happens. Somebody comes there to kill people or kill someone. Other ways it happens is there's a run-in,
Right.
And so I'm thinking, who would want to kill him? Because I don't know. But you think boating accident and associated stuff, and then how could you have a run-in? Well, here's a potential for a run-in.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I don't know. And if you read the media, you would think that our family has a bunch of enemies. Our family has done well, but it's because of the respect that you earn. It's not because of some weapon you wield, or you got a sword or a sword of justice. You know what?
Right.
You do a good job and you treat people with respect. And it's these people that hide behind the computer screen that, it's the minority voice. So I don't know. I don't know of enemies, but I do know that Paul would get threats all the time.
Yeah.
Lots of them. Is what I'm told secondhand. And I remember, however long ago, 8 months, a year and a half, or whatever. I don't even know how long it's been since the boating accident. Asking Paul about it, and he said, yeah. But it was pretty early on within the 6 months of the boating accident.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard Alex say that he continues to get them. But what does that mean when, what does that mean when somebody says, whatever they say, I don't even know what, I don't know the context of any of them, but threatens,
Yeah.
I don't know. I learned after the facts. I learned yesterday. I don't know how I learned it, but that apparently in the last few months, one of the caregivers for my mom told Alec she had heard, or somebody had told her somehow or another, that somebody's going to shoot up his house, and she was upset about it. I don't know how she learned, or what she learned, or why she believed that, but and I didn't know that until I heard it yesterday. When was today? Thursday? Yesterday's Wednesday. I was gone all day Tuesday, so Wednesday. But I'll tell you. So apparently she's been interviewed by SLED.
Okay. All right,
so when I learned of it, she'd already been interviewed by SLED, and I was like, well, why should they interviewing her? She wasn't the caregiver. I assumed it was because it was the caregiver that was at home when Alex went and visited my mom before he went back out and ultimately found Maggie and Paul. But it was the wrong one. So I was like, why are they interviewing her? And then that's when I learned that she had told Alex that. And she wasn't telling it like, I'm going to do it. She was saying like she heard it. So, I don't know the details of any of that. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know who.
You said Paul was there to fix the field. Does he still live at Moselle?
Well, I call it still living there, but I will tell you, I recently learned and somehow I learned in the last week or so, John said Paul's staying at the house, or Paul will be there too, and I assumed he was going to be going offshore fishing or something. That he'd be closer to leave. But no, he was working for John. Now I don't know how long he's been working for John. So, but I mean, his home is Moselle.
Okay.
Yeah, but he was apparently working for John, or had some work to do for John. So I know at least on that one occasion, and I think probably more. In fact, when we did the little car switch, John and I to get my dad to Savannah, if I'm not mistaken, I think, well, since remember the way it would have worked out, John would have taken the car that I switched with him. I drove John's truck back to Hampton. John would have taken Dad on to his appointments, and when he brings Dad back to the house, John gets his truck. And this may be how I learned that Paul was doing some work for John, but even though I knew he was staying at John's house a week or so before. Since Daddy got admitted to the hospital, John doesn't need to come to Hampton. And since Paul was working for John, Paul drove my mom's car back to my dad's house, got John's truck, and somehow or another they did. You know, maybe he drove it back the next day or whatever. But so that was that's actually on Monday. So Monday's when my dad went to the hospital. So Monday's when, if in fact that's the way it worked out, Paul would have driven my mom's car back to my mom's house and gotten John's truck. I don't know if they did that or not. I don't know.
Hey, what kind of truck does John have?
White Ford.
Okay.
A regular, like a 150.
Okay. So not 250, 150.
No. Alec had a, well, I guess Paul had a F-250. I guess that was a Ford. Paul had a white truck he drove. That was, had bigger tires and stuff. I don't know. I think that might have been a 250, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it was a Ford also.
Okay.
But that's not John's truck. That's what I call Paul's. It's really Alex, but
Yeah.
Paul drives all the vehicles out there. But that's the one I have seen him driving recently. Yeah.
Okay. Laura, you have any other questions?
I don't think so. Randy, you have any questions for us before we kind of wrap up this segment? Obviously, you have my business card, so if anything that pops up in your head that you recall you think is important, however little it is, just feel free to reach out and call me.
I'll definitely do it.
And like I said again, I'm sorry for your loss. Anyhow, we'll go ahead and stop the interview. It is 3:07.